Hi, I'm Jennifer Woods.
And I'm Cheryl Woods.
Have you noticed a change in the weather and the leaves?
That can only mean one thing, that it's time to celebrate Galilee's church anniversary.
Part of celebrating our church's anniversary is remembering her rich history.
In the beginning, from 1877 to 1907. In 1877, the dawn of a new day was wrought in the growing community of Shreveport, Louisiana. The Reverend Thomas Luke, who had organized the Greenwood Baptist Church in 1866, recognized the urgency to organize another church in Shreveport. It was at this time that he and some of the deacons organized and named this new church. Thus was the birth of Galilee Baptist Church. With the new dawn came the initial meeting, which was held in a fish house located on Jordan and Texas streets. As the daylight broke through, the Antioch Baptist Church on Texas Avenue shared the church building with Galilee for worship.
With consistent prayer and faith in God, a house was purchased from the Caddo Parish School Board and was moved to Lake and Hope Streets, as the house was twice destroyed by fire. But yet, the rays of protection by the mighty hand of God allowed the saints to rebuild each time.
Reverend Luke served well by instilling a lasting foundation in those whom he served during his pastorate. Some of the members moved out into the area, which is now called Allendale. They organized the Mount Canaan Baptist Church, which alleviated the problem of transportation. Reverend Luke served Galilee faithfully for 7 years. Daybreaks continued for this great church as the sunset came in. The life of Reverend Luke in the year of 1884.
The church joined in a unified prayer effort, and in 1884, the Reverend S.A. Johnson accepted Galilee's pastorate. Reverend Johnson resigned after serving 12 years in the year 1897.
The Reverend Robert Taylor accepted the pastorate of Galilee until he resigned in 1907 and organized the Baptist Temple Church, which is now located on Greenwood Road in Shreveport. Galilee continued to grow and transition from 1907 through 1958.
Mornings continued to glide the skies, and the Reverend E.S. Stills was invited to lead the church in a soul-winning revival. For 2 months, 300 were baptized. He was called and accepted pastorate in 1907. A new church site was purchased and 4,500 souls were added to the church. Reverend Stills preached his last communion sermon on February 2nd, 1935 to 2,150 worshipers. He died in April of the same year.
The Reverend James Martin accepted the leadership of Galilee and served from 1935 to 1937. During this time, souls were won to Christ and other additions were made later. He organized the Zion Baptist Church, which is now located on Hollywood Avenue.
Galilee has been tremendously blessed with outstanding preachers. In 1937, the Reverend M.B. Bilbrew of Tuskegee, Alabama, accepted the call. He was a great preacher and leader of men. He died at the age of 71. In June of 1941, the Reverend A.Z. Voice of Nacogdoches, Texas, accepted the challenge of leading Galilee. Reverend Voice left a living monument. After his resignation, Reverend John George led the congregation.
During the course of time, the Reverend I.C. Green of San Antonio, Texas, accepted the pastorate. Reverend Green was a profound speaker and soloist. His tenure ended in 1951.
Galilee continued in prayer for a leader. Reverend J.P. Pointer of Houston, Texas, was called but resigned in 1951.
On March 5, 1953, Galilee made a choice of Reverend J. Terrell Stewart as their shepherd. His emphasis was love. He stressed the love of God and fellow man. He believed in crusading for the lost.
A few years later, he accepted the call and pastorate of the Mount Tabor Baptist Church of Los Angeles, California. Believing that the effectual fervent prayers of the righteous availeth much, Galilee prayed earnestly for a pastor.
1958 through 2016, God sends a man of vision.
The prayers of Galilee were answered when on the first Sunday in December 1958, Reverend Ernest Edward Jones Sr., a native of DeRidder, Louisiana, preached the communion worship sermon at Galilee. Later that month, Galilee requested that he consider shepherding the flock of Galilee.
He accepted and was installed as the 10th pastor of Galilee in the spring of 1959. This great visionary leader became the longest serving pastor to date in Galilee's rich history. His pastorate would span over 5 decades, beginning in 1959 and ending with his transition to eternal life in 2016.
Under the leadership of Pastor Jones, thousands of souls were added to the church as Galilee continued to effectively minister to its people in many areas, to include preaching, evangelism, Christian education, multiple ministries, scouting, and more. God continued to bless Galilee. He allowed this great church to share the word and love of God, not only with the community, but with the world.
During Galilee's period of transition, from June 2016 through April 2017, the National Baptist Convention of America graciously supplied the pulpit with gospel messengers. Meanwhile, the saints once again entered into fervent prayer, beseeching God to send a pastor after his own heart. The prayers were answered in the person of Reverend Brian Wilson, a Shreveport native. Reverend Wilson accepted the call to pastor Galilee in April 2017 and preached his first sermon on Communion Sunday, June 4, 2017. Reverend Brian Wilson served until February 28, 2022.
In November 2022, Craig Collier Sr. was called to be the 12th pastor of the historic Galilee Baptist Church, preaching his first sermon on Christmas Day of the same year. His gift of preaching and teaching has opened doors to make him a much sought-after preacher and teacher. He is committed to making a difference in the lives of both the young and the old throughout Galilee and our community.